Good evening, Doctor and our fellow classmates. My name is Zhang, and this is my group member, Xiaoyu. Today, we are going to present the research article regarding to the impact of enabling performance measurements on managers' autonomous work motivation and performance. And this is the contents for today's presentation, and I will present the overview, literature review, hypothesis, and research methodology. And Xiaoyu will present the result and findings, conclusion and contribution, limitation, and provide the future studies. For overview, the motivation for this study is sustainable company performance relies on key determinants such as well-being and job satisfaction of managers and employees, which should be considered in design of performance management system. However, according to practical gap, while PMS are designed to enhance performance, they could also be perceived as a form of control and result in more pressures. And according to the theoretical gap, while past studies have demonstrated the positive relationship between the enabling PMS and performance measures, the intrinsic psychological mechanisms was unclear. So the research program for this study is how PMS perceived as an enabling formalization may enhance the managerial performance. And the significance for this study is the fourth manager control study to demonstrate the importance of psychological needs. And in addition, this study have complemented the previous study on enabling controls. For literature review, we will see the enabling PMS firstly. PMS is as a form of formalization, say as bureaucracy, and it can divide into coercive and enabling formalizations. For coercive formalization is the formal work procedures are imposed by senior managers to force employee compliance, while enabling formalization is referred to rules and systems support employees to do their work better. And these two types of formalization is differentiated by Adler and Boris in 1996 into four categories, which are repair, internal transparency, global transparency, and flexibilities. And under this study, the researchers mainly focus on enabling formalization. So under enabling formalization, the repair is refer to general procedures that facilitate response to the real-world contingencies and become opportunities for improvements. For internal transparency is referred to users need to understand the logic of the equipment's internal functioning and the information on the equipment status. For global transparency, it provides the operators with extensive information on the status of a broader production procedures. And for flexibility, it refers to machines are programmed to give advice and make suggestions, which could be used in controlling decision making. And according to coercive and enabling formalization, they have application in various aspects. For example, MCS and enabling PMS. For MCS, such as the Adler's achievement in 2004, examine how formal control system designed in an enabling way to facilitate the pursuit of efficiency and flexibility. And built on their work, following study have focused on budgeting, supply chain accounting, transfer pricing, costing system, and PMS. In terms of enabling PMS, it is a supporting system to guide the lower and middle level manager in making decisions and perceive their autonomics. And the researchers have highlighted the keyword which is perceive. Perceive is the manager behave based on their individual perceptions. And their variable study have indicated the relationship between enabling formalization and the performance outcome. For example, the Adler and Chapman in 2004 have indicated they have positive relationship between them. Next, we will see the literature review according to the self-determinant theory. Motivation can be categorizing based on traditional and more powerful way. For traditional category, it can divide into extrinsic and intrinsic because they doing the activity for inherent satisfaction or instrument reasons. And for more powerful category, it can divide into autonomous and controlling motivation. It is because the employee can behave in a way because they want to or because they have to. And because control motivation is failed to produce important beneficial work outcomes. So under this study, the researcher will mainly focus on the autonomous motivations. For autonomous motivations, it can divide into extrinsic motivation, identified regulation, and integrative regulations. For extrinsic motivation is doing an activity for the inherent satisfaction of the activity itself. And for identified regulation is personal accept the importance of the activity to his or her organizations. For integrative regulation is the value of the activity is in harmony with his or her personal values. And autonomous motivation is triggered by three basic psychological needs, which are autonomy, competence, and relativeness. For autonomy is that people have the need to experience choice and psychological freedom when they carry out their activities. And for competence is refer an individual's desire to feel effectively in interactive for the environmentals. And for relativeness is referred to the desire to feel connecting to others, to love or to be loved. And for hypothesis, the first hypothesis under the study is enabling PMS have positive relationship between the autonomic competence and relativeness. And the second hypothesis is the autonomic competence relativeness have positive relationship between the autonomous motivations. And the third hypothesis is that autonomous motivation have positive relationship between managerial performance. And the last hypothesis is that autonomous motivation as a median between enabling PMS and managerial performance through psychological need satisfaction, which are autonomic competence and relativeness. For research methodology, this study have conducted quantitative research by online questionnaire surveys. Before the surveys have conducted, the researchers have conduct variables pre-testing, which the questionnaire will evaluate by two business economy professors and two first-level managers. And at the same time, the researchers have also sent the online questionnaire to 36 managers who conduct a course which is the economics for non-economists. And finally, they have 60.67% return. And according to their feedback, to improve the questionnaires understandability and clarity, and finally to reduce the ambiguities. And the population for this study is 2,779 managers in Belgian companies. And for sampling criteria, it include the companies located in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium because the questionnaire was developed in the Dutch. And at the same time, it also include the company with a workforce of at least 100 employees were retained because small companies are less likely to have a PMS. And after that, the researchers have randomly selecting 2,150 managers in 926 companies as a potential respondents. And as a result, there are 14.56% response rate, which 289 managers, and it is similar to other accounting study on PMS design. And finally, there are only 186 out of 289 managers that employed by a company using a PMS will retain. And the researchers also have conducted two tests of control for non-responsive bias. The first is to compare the demographic and model items for the first 10% and the last 10% respondents. And in addition, they have compared the sector and industry classification of respondents and non-respondents. And the results show that there's no non-response bias. And for information collection, which include the company size, industry classification, and the respondents' characteristic. The average company size is 501 to 1,000 employees, and they are 54.3% from manufacturing industry, and the respondents' average age is 46.5 years old, and their 87% come from male. Their 33.3% are lower and 66.7% from top managers. And there are 89.8% employees have signed a permanent contract. And for variables measurements, first we will look at the enabling PMS. Enabling PMS is tailored to the context of PMS, but also focus on managers' perception of the nature of a PMS. Firstly, the researchers have translated the original features, which including repair, internal transparency, global transparency, and flexibility. And for each element, 6 items were developed. So there are 24 items is finally. However, these 24 items were evaluated by managers control expert due to the significant cross-loading. So finally, they have 12 items left, and it used 7-point Likert scale range. And for psychological need satisfaction, which used the work-related basic needs satisfaction scale. So finally, they have 6 items for autonomic, 4 items for competence, and 6 items for relativeness. And for autonomous motivation, is used the multi-dimensional work motivation scale. And at the beginning, they have 59 items from the original MWMS was examined and with pretext. And finally, we are reduced to 90 items, and 6 for autonomous motivation, 10 for control motivation, and 3 for motivations. And under the study, the researchers have mainly analyzing the autonomous motivations. And for manager performance, is used a 7-point Likert scale and measure around 9 dimensions. And the last one is measure overall performance. And this study have conducted the bonus as a control variable because the bonus may affect the manager's autonomous work motivation depending on their inherent perception of an PMS. And the researchers also conduct a Hans single factor test to assess the common matter bias. And specifically, the research performed a principal components factor analysis on the 43 items measure 6 main variables, which is enabling PMS, autonomic, competence, relativeness, autonomous motivation, and managerial performance. And the results show that the common matter bias is not a concern in this study. So next, I will pass to Xiaoyu to present the following part. Thank you.
Next comes the results and finding. In this study, it used structural equation modeling to examine the mediating role of the three basic psychology needs, which are autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and autonomous motivation in the relationship between the enabling PMS and managerial performance. Regarding the SEM, it can ensure the measurement reliability and evaluate the hypothesis. In this study, it conducted the analysis in almost 22 following a two-step approach. The first step is to evaluate the fitness of the measurement model and validity of the measurement. The second step is to test the structure model. So next is the first step, measurement model. They are using the confirmatory vector analysis in AMOS to assess the construct validity. And regarding the measurement model fit, they evaluate using the multiple fit indices as proposed by Hu and Banter 1999. Regarding goodness of the fit index, they are using the comparative fit index CFI and chi-square degree of freedom. Regarding the badness of fit indices, the root mean square error approximation and the standardized root mean square ratio are used in this study. For the measurement model, the study showed a reasonable model fit, which CFI equal to 0.85 combined with SRMR is 0.068 and RMSEA is 0.056. And according to the behavior research, the standard of degree of freedom less than 3, it indicates a good fit. Hence, in this study, the chi-square degree of freedom is 1.575, which indicates the model is fit the data very well. And next comes to the validity of the measurement. Before they continue the analysis relation between the latent variables, they are test the three validity and reliability of this model, which are internal consistency reliability, convergent validity, and discriminant validity. So first, internal consistent reliability. Which can see from this table, the first two columns, Cronbach alpha and composite reliability. All the multi-item constructs are showed all above threshold value of 0.7, so we can see that there is a high reliability of this model. Second is convergent validity. The item loadings were examined through confirmatory factor analysis in AMOS. So in this figure 2, we can see there are 6 factors loadings fell below the threshold of 0.5, which I have used the right circle to show in this figure 2. So the 6 factors are AUM1, AUM2, PERF2, PERF7, PERF8, as well as ENA11. So all these are below the threshold value. But in this study, they decided to include these items in their respective constructs to ensure the content validity, because if to delete these items, the Cronbach alphas will be deteriorated. Third is discriminant validity. They use the square root of each construct's average variance extract, which I showed using the right correction symbol. We can see that all these figures are greater than the off-diagonal reported correlations, which shows that each construct is distinct from other constructs. So overall, you can see all the above 3 validity and reliability tests are observed from the measurement model indicates adequate construct validity for all constructs in the model. So we can conclude that all the measurement models are reliable and valid. Next comes to the step 2 to test the structure model. In this step, they test the effect of enabling PMS on managerial performance and the mediating role of the psychological need satisfaction and autonomous motivation. Regarding the fitness of this structure model, the fit statistic showed that this model reproduced the sample data reasonably well. So here in this step, they first test about the effect of the enabling PMS on the managerial performance through direct effect estimate under the unconstructed structure model through the standardized path coefficient. So both panel A, table 5 and figure 3 showed the direct effect estimate. We focusing look at the figure 3. So in figure 3, we can see that the manager perceived the enabling PMS has a positive association with the three basic psychological needs, which are autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and which can demonstrate the hypothesis 1, all the H1A, B, and C are supported. And regarding the three basic psychological needs, only autonomy and competence has a positive association with autonomous motivation. But for the relatedness does not have a significant impact on the autonomous motivation, which the hypothesis 2A and 2B are supported, while H2C are not supported. And regarding the autonomous motivation also has a positive relationship with the managerial performance, which the hypothesis 3 is supported. Regarding the control variable, the management level also has found a positive association with both autonomous motivation and managerial performance. So next, they are going to test the mediation effect. They calculate the indirect and total effect using a bootstrapping procedure with 5,000 samples and a 95% confidence interval. And they also calculate the specific indirect effect using series mediation estimate in almost 22, and the products of the regression coefficient and their significance are automatically calculated. According to the Preacher and Harris 2004, this study also calculated the significance of the total effects to formally test whether enabling PMS positively influence the autonomous motivation and managerial performance. In this study, they test the mediation effect through indirect and total effect estimate and the unconstrained structure model. Well, from this table, we can see that from the direct effect estimate test, there is not significant relationship between the enabling PMS and autonomous motivation as well as managerial performance. However, regarding the indirect effect as well as total effect estimate, there is a significant relationship between the enabling PMS and autonomous motivation as well as managerial performance. Thus, we can conclude that the satisfaction of the three basic psychological needs and autonomous motivation fully mediates the relationship between the enabling PMS as well as managerial performance. Thus, it can demonstrate the hypothesis 4. For the specific indirect effect estimate and the unconstrained structure model, it can be seen that the series mediation path from enabling PMS to managerial performance through autonomy and competence are significant, while the series mediation path through relatedness is non-significant. In this study, they also provide two additional evidence to test the mediation effect. So they run two constrained structure models, which are constrained structure model B and constrained structure model C in the following slides. So in constrained structure model B, it can be seen that there is a significant direct path from enabling PMS to autonomous motivation, while there is a non-significant direct path from enabling PMS to managerial performance. However, both indirect effect and total effect of enabling PMS on managerial performance remain significant. For the second additional evidence of mediation effect, we can see that under the constrained structure model C, there is a significant direct path from enabling PMS to managerial performance and the direct effect estimation, and they provide evidence for the basis line expectation that without added mediators, the enabling PMS is significantly positive associated with managerial performance in the constrained structure model C. So from the overall two additional evidence of mediation effect, we can see that these results all support the mediation hypothesis 4. This study also conduct two robustness checks. First is to include controlled motivation as one of the latent variable to verify whether the result will remain robust to including this other type of motivation. So from the analysis, we can see that the enabling PMS has a positive association with all three basic psychological needs, which are autonomy, competence, and relatedness, Well, for all the three basic psychological needs, only autonomy and competence has positive relationship with the autonomous motivation, while the relatedness has a negative association with autonomous motivation. For the autonomous motivation has a positive association with managerial performance. So from above, you can see that all these results are consistent with the hypothesis test. And regarding the satisfaction of the needs for the autonomy, there is a negative association with controlled motivation, while for the controlled motivation, there is not a significant association with the managerial performance. To test the mediation effect, we can see that for indirect effect, the enabling PMS has a significant positive association with both autonomous motivation and controlled motivation, while for total effect, there is a positive association between enabling PMS and autonomous motivation, while not significant association between enabling PMS and controlled motivation. Thus, we can conclude that enabling PMS only has a significant impact on autonomous motivation overall and not on controlled motivation. For the specific indirect effect, it showed that the serial mediation path from enabling PMS to managerial performance through the autonomous motivation are significant for both autonomy and competence, but not for the relatedness. The serial mediation paths through controlled motivation are all non-significant, since all p-values are greater or equal than 0.528. Thus, to conclude, the mediation path through autonomous motivation indeed explain the relationship between the enabling PMS and managerial performance, so all the results are robust. The second robustness check is to test on the manufacturer companies only. They rerun the structure model for manufacturer companies only, which n equal to 101, and they exclude the industry effects. They also excluding the satisfaction of the three basic psychological needs as mediators to lower the degrees of freedom, and the analysis showed that the main findings are all robust in manufacturer companies, since the enabling PMS has a significant association with autonomous motivation, while the autonomous motivation has a significant effect on the managerial performance. To conclude the whole analysis, PMS are perceived as enabling is positively associated with managers' psychological need satisfaction, resulting in higher autonomous work motivation, which in turn is also positively associated with managerial performance. The autonomous work motivation mediates the relationship between the enabling PMS and managerial performance through satisfaction of the three basic psychological needs, which are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Here need to be noted that the PMS are perceived as enabling is positively associated with managers' psychological need satisfaction, resulting in higher autonomous motivation for both autonomy and competence, but not for relatedness. Regarding the contribution for this study contribute to prior study, as prior study only focusing on the enabling control and performance outcome. In this study, they contribute to theoretical as they study focusing on psychological need satisfaction contribute to the growing body of the management control research on the role of the autonomous work motivation, and they also contribute to the methodology. The study is the first one to capture the managers' enabling perceptions of the PMS on this measurement. And regarding the mediating role of the psychological need satisfaction in the link between the enabling PMS and performance has both theoretical and practical implications. Last is the study's limitation and avenues. There are three limitations of this study. In this study, they are not able to control for within firm response due to the anonymous collection of response, since all the 6 managers are within one organization. Second is that despite several robustness checks, this study may be susceptible to endogeneity issues. Third is the reverse causality cannot be ruled out entirely, since they only relied on self-reported variables. Next, regarding the future research, The future research can examine whether in more interactive work contexts, such as collective participation in controlled system design, higher relatedness does result in higher autonomous work motivation, and the future research could benefit from a more objective measurement of managerial performance, such as supervisors or colleague ratings. And the future research can also contain field experimental data or longitudinal data could be collected. And they can continue build on the psychological need satisfaction in the link between enabling PMS and performance to better understand the causal model and identify future moderators and mediators. And in the future studies, they can also investigate the enabling nature of the package of control rather than only focusing on the PMS. The future study can also examine the determinants that drives the choice for more enabling versus more coercive controls. And in the future, they can also focus on more an impact on well-being, such as stress, burnout, and satisfactions. That's all for our presentations. Thank you.